Angela, can you check that for me, just to make sure I don't go crazy?
Good. All right, group, what is your topic?
Norse mythology and Norse mythology, creation, the gods, and Ragnarok, and their stories that lead up to Ragnarok.
Excellent. Okay, audience, are you ready? Group, are you ready? And proceed.
Mythology is one great thing that we all have been influenced by throughout our societies and whole communities. Whether you realize it or not, mythological things have influenced every single thing of your life. Creation stories, ending stories throughout things, and just different specific types of gods. And there's stories that lead up to these things are things we're going to be talking about today. Starting off with a quote by Daniel McCoy from the Norse Mythology for Smart People, last updated in 2020. Characteristically, the gods covet important natural resources, which the giants own, then steal them and turn them to their own advantage by utilizing them to create culture. That is, they put the giants' raw materials to work for themselves. These raw materials are of diverse kinds and include intellectual capital, such as the ability to brew ale, as well as the cauldron in which it is made, and abstractions made concrete like the meat of poetry and the runes of wisdom. So starting off with the creation story. In the beginning of time, there was three places. You had your realm of ice, Niflheim, your gaping abyss, Ginnungagap, and your land of fire, Muspelheim. And at one point, Niflheim and Muspelheim started coming closer together in Ginnungagap until they met. And the fire started melting the ice, causing it to drip. And those dripping waters created the first godlike giant, being Ymir. And Ymir could reproduce asexually. So when he would sleep, he'd have giants coming out of his arms and legs. And there was also a cow, Abdullah, and that cow would lick the ice and get the salts from it, nourishment, and she would then nourish Ymir from then on. After a bunch of giants had been made, a bunch of kids and all that, there were two in specific, Bor and Bestala. Those two giants are the parents of the god Odin. Odin and his two brothers eventually came and they slayed Ymir, and they used his body to create everything. They used his flesh to create soil, his blood to create the oceans, and his hair to create vegetation. And they used other parts of his body to create the clouds and sky. They made the four dwarfs, signaling the four cardinal directions. They made the first two humans, that being Ask and Embla, and they used his skull to create the moon and the stars. The creation of the moon and the stars, they cracked open his skull and causing many different things to happen. Encyclopedia Britannica, last updated in 2023, stated, after the gods had created the sky, they made the sun from molten sparks that had flown out of the fiery realm of Muspelheim, and they set it in the sky to illuminate the world. This quote is very important because it tells us how they created the sky and how they created stars, technically also our sun, which is Sol, and then doesn't specifically say how they create Mani, which is pretty much because they take them from their parents for no specific apparent reason that we are given, but they're just kidnapped by their parents. Then they're chased by wolves. When they're chased by wolves, these wolves are Haiti and Skull. These wolves chase them across the sky, but never seem to ever catch them. The reason is because if they're caught, it will lead to Ragnarok. And Ragnarok is the very end. According to Bobby Power, last updated June 3rd, 2019, there were two wolves who were believed to be the sons of Fenrir that chased after the chariots of Sol and Mani. Their names were Haiti and Skull, which respectively meant hate and mockery. But no matter how hard the wolves tried, they didn't manage to catch Sol and Mani until Ragnarok. All right, so Odin, him being one of the most powerful gods, he is the leader of the Aesir tribe. His origin, obviously, like we said, came from Bor and Bestla, his two parents. And he's the god of poetry and war, and he has a lot of supernatural abilities, some of them including superhuman strength, superhuman toughness. He's an expert torturer, and he is incredible at getting information out of people. In that way, being he can basically just look at them and they'll feel so overwhelmed that they'll spill any information that they have. His family, he has many wives and many kids, and probably the two most popular kids will be Thor and Balder. In the previously cited Norse Mythology for Smart People, written by Daniel McCoy, last updated in 2020, states that his Old Norse name Odin is formed from two parts. The first noun, odor, which means ecstasy, fury, and inspiration, and the suffix in, which is the masculine definite article, which, when added to the end of another word like this, means something like the master of, or a perfect example of. There's a picture of Odin to kind of give you a representation of what he looked like, and his depiction with only having one eye. So Odin was obsessed with being the most knowledgeable being ever. So he went on many quests to try and find knowledge, and two stuck out the most. When he went to the Well of Erd and when he hung from the Tree of Life. So when he went to the Well of Erd, it is guarded by a giant, Mimir, and Mimir takes a drink of this water every day. So Mimir is super knowledgeable. The Well of Erd is located at the Tree of Roots. So Odin goes down there, meets Mimir, and after a quick conversation, Mimir says, "You can have a drink of this water if you make a sacrifice." So without hesitation, Odin plucks out one of his eyes, drops it into the well, and takes a sip. He's overwhelmed with knowledge, is satisfied, and leaves. And then his second expedition for knowledge is when he hanged from the Tree of Life for 9 days and nights with no food and water and no extra help. He told his companions to leave him alone while he does this, because if anyone tried to help him while he was hanging, the guardians of the runes, which is what held the knowledge, they would seek him unworthy and wouldn't let him see the runes. So he hung there for 9 days and nights, no help, and eventually after those 9 days, the guardians of the runes sought him worthy to see what was written in the runes and gave him a glimpse at what was written on them. And even just a glimpse was so powerful and contained so much knowledge that he was good and he left. From the previously cited Norse Mythology for Smart People, written by Daniel McCoy, last updated in 2020, he states that Odin's quest for wisdom is never ending, and he is willing to pay any price, it seems, for the understanding of life's mysteries, that he craves more than anything else.
So another important god in Norse mythology is Thor. Since Thor is so prevalent in many Norse stories, it's important to understand his name origin, his significance, his family, part of his role in Ragnarok, and his magic items. So to start, according to a 2023 article from Britannica Academic, an online encyclopedia for students, his name derives from the Germanic term for thunder. Now this makes a lot of sense, as the World History Encyclopedia article from December 18, 2018 by Joshua Mark, a part-time professor at Mars College, states that Thor is a Norse god of thunder, the sky, and agriculture. Now, the previously cited Britannica Academic explains that Thor was commonly praised by peasants as he was known to bring rain, which would help with their crops. The World History Encyclopedia continues to explain Thor's family. So Thor is a son of Odin. He's married to Sif, who is a fertility goddess, and with Sif he has 2 children. His first is his son Modi, and the second is his daughter Thrud. Now he also has another son named Magni, which he had with a giantess. Now Modi and Magni play an important role in Ragnarok, because after Thor, dies because that's part of his destiny, they will take his hammer and they will use it to help restore order to the universe. Thor's hammer is one of his many symbols. Start the Younger Edda, written in 1222 by Snorri Sturluson, which is a recording of Norse mythology, states that Thor's house, Fylkir, has 540 floors and is the largest house that man ever made. So this would have been where he resided most of the time, and that's a rendering of what it may have looked like. Thor is also known to have his carriage, which is pulled by 2 goats. Now these goats are very unique. They can be killed one day, eaten, and the next day they will be alive again and perfectly healthy. The only thing Thor had to make sure that he didn't do was break one of their bones, because if a bone was broken one day, it would still be broken the next. Thor is also known for his 3 main magical items. The first of which is his hammer, which he uses to defeat his enemies, such as giants. The second is his iron glove, which he needs to actually utilize this hammer. And the third item is his magical belt, which actually, when worn, will double his strength that he already has. So Thor's hammer is a main character and big role in one of the stories that Thor is known to be in. So one day Thor woke up and realized that his hammer was missing. So he went to Freya, who is one of the goddesses, and asked her for help. While he was asking for help, Loki went down to Jotunheim, which is the land of the giants, and he saw Thrym standing there by himself. And he went to Thrym and he asked him if he had taken the hammer. And Thrym responded by saying that the Elder Edda of Saban Sivson in 1220 quotes Thrym saying, "Shall no man get again unless he bring me Freya's wife," meaning that he's not going to give the hammer back unless they had Freya marry him. So Loki brought this news back to Thor, and they went to Freya to explain the situation. She was not happy and refused to marry Thrym for them to get the hammer back. So the gods had a meeting and they tried to figure out a new way to get the hammer back. At one point, Heimdall, who's another god, came up with the idea of Thor dressing up as Freya and taking part in the wedding so he can get the hammer back. At first, Thor was very mad about this idea and refused to do it, but after being reminded what would happen if he did not get his hammer back, he finally gave in. So they dressed him up like Freya, they went down to Jotunheim, and during the wedding, Thrym had, who he believed to be Freya, hold the hammer to consecrate the marriage. When the instant the hammer was back in Thor's hands, he used it to kill Thrym and all the other giants that were down there. And that was how he managed to get his hammer back.
Now, before our next myth that we talk about, Sky History stated that Loki, last updated in 2023, was one of the most notorious gods in Norse mythology. This can be explained through his lineage and his domain. Now, despite popular culture belief through Marvel, he is not the full blood brother of Thor. In fact, he may not even be related to Thor at all. He is either full giant by his parents Laufey and his father Forbadi, or he is half brother to Odin through his mother's bloodline, and his father still would have been Forbadi at that instant. And then if he was full giant, the reason why he would have been brother to Odin still is because they swore a blood oath when they were at a young age. He also has a lineage of having many children, but the 5 that are going to be significant in Ragnarok are 2 by his wife Sigyn, which were Vali and Narfi, and then 3 by a giantess. And then his domain was the fact that he was the Norse god of trickery, lies, chaos, and fire. He was said to be the living personification of chaos and disorder itself. He also had the ability to change his shape and sex to the point where his sex was greatly questioned. The William G. Dottie, general editor of World Mythology, printed in 2002, stated, "He was both the constant companion and great friend of the gods, and at the same time, an evil influence and deadly enemy." What he's meaning or referencing by this is the fact that he was often sought out by the gods when they needed help. But he was also the cause for a lot of the myths and troubles within Norse mythology itself. Timothy R. Roberts et al., authors of Mythology, Tale of Ancient Civilizations, stated, "He was most unpleasant, but also the most interesting." The previously stated Timothy R. Roberts also stated he was a malicious mastermind to a sly, good-natured troublemaker.
So one of the many various important children of Loki would actually be Fenrir, who was the wolf son of Loki. And he's very important because of the role they play in Ragnarok. And Ragnarok is the prophecy of the end of everything. And because of Odin's quest for knowledge, he sought out this prophecy and found out, Loki and his children were the main malefactors of this. And so because of this, they were all punished in their own various ways. And Fenrir was actually kidnapped as a pup from Loki. And he was fed and he grew to a gargantuan size to the point where the gods didn't even want to go near him because they were afraid of his power. And the only one who was brave enough to feed him was Tyr, the god of war. And again, they were very afraid of his power and how large Fenrir was growing. So Odin attempted to chain him up many times, but Fenrir was so large that he broke free of every single attempt to chain except for one. From the previously cited Joshua J. Mark in World History Encyclopedia in 2021 said that scholars usually claim that the wolf was chosen as the god's antagonist because the people of Scandinavia understood wolves as dangerous predators. But the story itself does not support this, as Fenrir is depicted as living peacefully among the gods as their pet until he's betrayed by them. And this quote is explaining that he was a very innocent pup, and he had absolutely nothing to do with any of the harm of the gods. But because of this prophecy and the fear of what was to be, they actually caused the prophecy by kidnapping him and making Fenrir very angry and building a tension in between them. And also, Fenrir was very loyal to the gods before that successful chaining. So another child of Loki would be Hel, and she's the daughter of Loki. And Hel is synonymous with death and is kind of like the Grim Reaper figure of Norse mythology. She's never quite in the front picture of every story, but she's always in the background, kind of looming over every situation that's happening. And when the Ragnarok prophecy was found out, she was also punished along with the other two children of Loki. And her punishment was being cast down into the realm of Hell, which is kind of like the after, kind of like Hell in other different various mythologies and stuff like that. And she gained the authority over the dead there, and she became the queen of the dead, and she couldn't leave the realm just like her subjects, and she was cast down there until Ragnarok. And from the previously cited Joshua J. Mark, death can change one's life in the turn of a head or the blink of an eye. And finally, this is what Hell would have represented, possibly then encouraging the living to make the most of their time before that time was up. Again, assuring the fact that Hell was the Grim Reaper figure and the looming, casting shadow over every single character in Norse mythology. And she's also a very big part in Ragnarok with raising the armies of Hell. So the third and final important child of Loki is Jormungandr, who is a serpent, and he's the son of Loki and Angerboda. And it grew to a very large size, and when Odin found out the Ragnarok prophecy, he cast Jormungandr down to Midgard, which is kind of like the representation of Earth in Norse mythology. And it was said that Jormungandr, when cast down, grew so large that he encircled all of Midgard and was able to bite his own tail. And Jormungandr was actually what is called an agent of transformation. And this is pretty much the representation of something that was born into society in order to change the way things are currently. And usually it's for the same or the bettering of the way things are. And he was actually a main cause of the collapse of the gods' orders. So from the previously cited Joshua J. Mark, Jormungandr is therefore understood by modern-day scholars as an agent of transformation along the lines of the symbolism of serpents in many, if not all, of the belief systems of the ancient world. Again, assuring just like how in the Christianity beliefs the serpent is the thing that caused sin to become a thing and change the way humans acted forever. This is again Jormungandr's cause, as he was a huge malefactor in the fact that all the gods fell and died. And this changed the order of the world, and humans kind of took charge after that. So a huge story of the gods is their Loki and Thor's journey to the stronghold of Utgard Loki. And on their way to the stronghold, they stumbled across Skymir, who is a giant in the mountains. And Skymir was just doing a lot of things and just kind of trash talking the gods and just getting them very tensed up and very annoyed with Skymir. To the point where Thor tried to take his anger out on him and strike him down with his hammer. But right before he could, Skymir disappeared, and the guys just continued on, very annoyed to the stronghold. And then they arrived at the stronghold, and Utgard Loki told them, "You can only stay here if I challenge you this competition and you complete it, then you can stay here."
Now, one of the first gods to actually get to choose their challenge, as Utgard Loki would let them, was Loki. Loki decided to challenge one of Utgard Loki's men to an eating competition. Utgard Loki picked his man Loki to face off against Loki in an eating competition. They sat down at a table with a trough full of food. Whoever ate to the middle first was the winner. Now, when Loki finished, he looked up and Loki was already there. The problem was that he not only ate the food, Loki ate the table, the trough, and the food contained inside of it.
And another competition that was put against Thor was they tested Thor's strength in various different ways. The first way being a drinking competition between him and the horn they give him. And he just keeps drinking and drinking this horn, thinking it's going to be an easy competition, but he realizes the horn is not empty, no matter how much he drinks it. And this is later found out to be that he got tricked when he was drinking the horn. But another competition that he did right afterwards was trying to lift a cat. And Utgard Loki just pointed at a cat that was sitting in the corner. He's like, "Go lift that cat." And Thor's like, "Oh, this is easy. I'm the god of thunder. I'm big, strong." And he goes up to lift the cat and can only lift the paw of the cat. And he gets really frustrated with this. And again, it was later found out that they were being tricked with all these competitions.
One of the gods that was faced off against was Loki again. So when he found out what Loki actually was, he was really surprised. Loki was said to be the living personification of fire. That's why he ate everything and why he ate it fast, because nothing can eat anything faster than fire.
And for the drinking contest, it was found out that Thor was drinking out of a horn that was taking water directly from the sea, and he had lowered the sea level a considerable amount, which impressed Utgard Loki, along with the fact that the cat was actually Jormungandr, the giant world serpent, disguised as a cat, and when he lifted the paw, he actually lifted a whole giant section of this thing. And this is really important because this is the first time that those two technically meet in their great rivalry up until Ragnarok. And again, Thor is very short-tempered, so when he found out that they were being tricked the whole time, Thor tried to strike down Utgard Loki, but he vanishes, and so does the whole keep right after the competition.
Now off to one of our last gods that we'll be talking about, but one of my opinions most important of all of them. Balder was the son of Odin and Frigg, and was pretty much a Christ figure for the whole entire Norse mythology, because of the fact that he ended up dying, but did not come back, and will come back. Will led to Ragnarok, and he'll come back at Ragnarok. So according to the UXL Encyclopedia of World Mythology, last updated May 23rd of 2018, Balder was the most beautiful of the gods and one of the most beloved by Odin. This just shows how much he was loved by everyone and all the gods, because he was so great and pretty much perfect in every single way. His importance was that his death would lead to Ragnarok. His death was the main gateway to all of Ragnarok and the beginning of the end. The beginning of the end is something that we all think of. The World History Encyclopedia, last updated September 16th in 2021, said his name might mean Lord, but is also associated with day and courage. This kind of just ties more into he is similar to a Christ figure because he was loved by everyone and led to the end. Balder's dream, pretty much his dream is when he was younger, he had a dream, and that dream was that he died. Really simple there. And pretty much what happened was Frigg, his mother, cared very much about him, decided to take this and make sure that he had all that information. And then she takes all this and makes every single thing in the world make a promise to not hurt him. And she goes to everything from sky, sea, all plants, but she skips over one thing because of its insignificance, small and unimportant nature. She skipped over the mistletoe. The mistletoe was very small and insignificant according to Frigg, and just had no reason to ask it to not kill her son. But eventually, Loki, being the trickster he is, decided to make it so that she would figure this out eventually by disguising himself as a woman, talking to Frigg, learning the secret that the mistletoe was there, and then turning to find his brother, turning to take the mistletoe, growing it out to be an arrow or dart, and then going to his brother Hordor, to Balder's brother Hordor specifically, to shoot the arrow at Balder in order to kill him. Historiska, the Swedish History Museum's website says, the myths about Balder are about death and attempts to bring him back from the underworld, but he does not return until the destruction of the world in Ragnarok. Again, tying in to being like a Christ figure.
So Odin sought the prophecy to the end of everything, which is the Ragnarok prophecy, and he also sought to prevent it after he found out what the main malefactors of it was, which is of course Loki and his children, as previously mentioned. And in order to do this, he thought that he needed to punish them or tie them up and attempt to stop them from what is to come.
So the punishment of Loki was brought about by the death of Baldur. The first thing that the Aesir gods did was turn his son Vali into a wolf who went feral, ripped his brother apart, where they then used his intestines to tie him up to 3 rocks. The previously stated Timothy R. Roberts said, using Narvi's intestines as binding, the Aesir tied Loki down to the 3 massive rocks, where they then put a snake above his forehead that would drip poison down onto him. It was so excruciatingly painful that it would cause earthquakes. So his wife Sigyn would put a bowl under his forehead to catch the poison, and when it was full, she'd walk away and empty it.
So along with the punishment of Loki came also the punishment of his children, as previously mentioned, and this again involves the banishment of Hel into the realm of Hel, and her gaining the authority over the dead and commanding the armies of Hel. Another punishment was of Jormungandr, the world serpent, in which he was cast down from the god's place to Midgard, and he grew to encircle Midgard. And then another was the binding of Fenrir to try and prevent him from causing Ragnarok. And this is a story in itself because, again, they attempt to chain him many, many times, but he was so large and so strong that nothing worked. And so finally, Odin devised a plan where he create this magical ribbon that when wrapped around something, it would only grow tighter the more something struggled if it was in it. And Fenrir only agreed to be chained by this ribbon if he could have something from the gods instead. And this sacrifice was Tyr's arm in Fenrir's mouth as they're tying it. And Tyr, being the god of war and having a close relationship with Fenrir, he was the only one willing to do something like this. And they were tying Fenrir with the ribbon, and once Fenrir realized, oh shoot, I'm being tricked and this is actually going to chain me, he bit Tyr's arm clean off, and this is how the god of war lost his arm, and how Fenrir is binded until right. The Massachusetts Institution of Technology, from the ancient text of Norse mythology, stated that they then shoved the sword into his mouth so that the hilt was in his lower jaw and the point in the upper. That is his gag. He howls horribly, and the slaver running from his mouth forms a river called Vaughn, or expectation. There he lies until Ragnarok. And this shows his unbelievably excruciating torture that they put him through just to prevent something called Ragnarok. And his saliva running from his mouth was formed into a river and called expectation because of the expectation of the end of everything when he escapes.
So one of Loki's children, Jormungandr, had a large rivalry with Thor. They're the 2 main factors that are going to be playing against each other during Ragnarok. So one day, Thor decided that he was going to go get Jormungandr. So he started to head over to find him. On his way there, he stopped at Heimir's house. And while he was there, he asked if he could stay there. Now, Heimir didn't want to keep any guests, even though that was the proper thing to do. So he tried to make an excuse that he had to take care of his large herd of cattle and that he was going to be going fishing the next day. So it wouldn't be worth it. But Thor responded saying that he'd gladly go fishing with him. So the next morning, Heimir had Thor go get some bait for fishing. And according to the previously cited younger Edda, he took the largest ox, which was called Hindenburg, twisted his head off, and brought it down to the steep strand. This did not make Hymir happy, as it was one of his best cattle. So they went out fishing, and as they were going up farther and farther, Hymir began to get more worried because they were getting closer to where Jormungandr lived. But Thor, determined to catch him, kept going farther and farther. Eventually, he took the ox head, put it on the fishing line, and waited to catch Jormungandr. Jormungandr went for the bait, and as he was pulling him in, Hymir became more scared because there was poisonous venom getting everywhere. Just as Thor was about to deliver the final blow to Jormungandr and end his life, Hymir cut the line, allowing Jormungandr to get away. This made Thor very angry, and in the Book of Norse Mythology, published in 2014 by Jake Jackson, who's written many other books of mythology, Thor got mad at Hymir and sent him flying into the icy waters, never to be seen again.
And this is also very important because it's the second and almost final time that Thor and Jormungandr meet, building up that tension until Ragnarok. And again, with the Ragnarok prophecy, Odin rode to Hell in order to try and prevent it for another time. And this is right before Baldur's death, so it was a very desperate time for Odin. And he resurrected a witch down in Hell and asked her what he can do to prevent Ragnarok. And she said, go back to your families because there's nothing you can do. It's going to happen one way or another. And Hel was already beginning to welcome Baldur to his place. And once Baldur died, Hermodr, which is Baldur's brother, rode down to Helgavr, which is kind of like the path the dead take to Hel after they die. And he went down and asked Hel, can you please resurrect my brother Baldur in order to prevent the end of everything? But because of her punishment, she said, I'm only going to do it if you ask everything in the 9 realms to weep for Baldur. And every single creature did over time, except for Thok, which is thought to be a transformation of Loki. And this is again Loki up to his mischievous deeds again. And why would he weep for someone who to try and save the lives of people who punished him? And so Hel's representation in Norse is again the main cause of Ragnarok because of this reluctancy to resurrect Baldur, and also her looming figure over Norse mythology at all times. So Ragnarok happens, and Hel's army is raised by Fenrir's Hel, although it's not exactly stated how Fenrir gets out of his binding. He does. And the rivals battle, which is Jormungandr and Thor. And Jormungandr and Thor fight to the death, to the point where Thor is able to kill Jormungandr. And once Thor kills Jormungandr, he is also sprayed by venom, killing Thor as well. Fenrir breaks loose from his bindings, not knowing specifically how, but he goes immediately for revenge on Odin, who is the person that put him into this punishment in general. He kills Odin and then is killed by Odin's son, and Ragnarok happens, and it's the end. But Robbie Mitchell from Ancient Origins in 2022 stated that the ending of Jormungandr's story is a happy one. He may fall, but he takes his old nemesis Thor with him. In helping to destroy the old world, Jormungandr ensures a new, perhaps better world can take place.
So for our summary, we talked about creation, the gods, their children, and how they led to the stories of everything that we're a part of, and how it's summarized into Ragnarok, the destruction story, and the end. Thank you.
Do we end up getting?
What is
1 second.
32, 59, 29.
I was thinking about just skipping over the summary.